She mocked me as an ATM that talks too much, so I started acting like one: no emotion, no support, no benefits. She hated her own rules. I lead the largest infrastructure project in Minnesota at Green West Engineering. At 35, I've built a reputation as the go-to chief engineer who delivers results under pressure. But pressure at work turned out to be nothing compared to what waited for me at home. Sierra looks perfect to the outside world, beautiful, charming, and always camera-ready for her styling job at Revive Boutique. When we first met, her laugh could light up a room and her compassion seemed boundless. That's what drew me to her. That's what made me fall in love. Our home in Maple Grove sits in one of those cookie-cutter modern American suburbs where keeping up appearances matters almost as much as keeping up with mortgage payments. White picket fences, perfectly mowed lawns, and neighbors who smile too widely while judging silently. We moved here 3 years ago, a year after our wedding, convinced we'd build our forever life together. Our courtship was intense. 2 years of passion, deep conversations, and feeling like we'd found our person. We weathered storms together. When my father died suddenly of a heart attack, Sierra held me through sleepless nights. When her mother needed heart surgery, I took 2 weeks off work to help Sierra care for her. We thought we were unbreakable. The first year of marriage seemed to confirm that belief. Sierra cooked almost every night, researching clean eating recipes that would keep us healthy. We'd split household chores without keeping score. Weekend grocery shopping became our ritual, walking hand in hand through aisles planning our week together. Every evening featured our no-phone talk time. Sierra would curl up beside me on the couch, rest her head on my shoulder, and ask about my day with genuine interest. She'd share her thoughts, her dreams. I'd never felt so connected to another human. We should set up a joint savings account. She suggested 6 months in, half our income goes straight there. We'll buy our dream house faster that way. Her financial planning impressed me as much as her thoughtfulness. I remember thinking, if angels exist, they must look like Sierra in that first year of marriage. The change began so subtly, I barely noticed. Around 6 months after the wedding, our intimacy started to wane. "I'm just tired" became Sierra's go-to phrase. I understood her job could be demanding, dealing with clients all day. I gave her space. Then household responsibilities quietly shifted. I found myself washing dishes more often, taking out trash, doing laundry. I didn't mind. Initially, my project was ramping up and I was working longer hours. It seemed fair that I'd pick up slack when I could. Our dinner conversations grew shorter, then disappeared altogether. "I already ate with Trina," or "I'm not hungry," replaced our shared meals. Trina, her best friend and boss at the boutique, seemed to occupy more of her time than I did. By our first anniversary, the chill had become unmistakable. I planned a weekend getaway to Seattle, somewhere Sierra had always wanted to visit. She packed her most photogenic outfits and took countless pictures for Instagram, but never once thanked me for the trip. Her social media portrayed a perfect couple while we slept with our backs to each other. After that trip, her material demands escalated. "Babe, I really need this Saint Laurent bag. All the other stylists have designer pieces." The $1,800 price tag was steep given our savings goals, but I wanted to make her happy. I reluctantly agreed, hoping it would bring back her smile. Our joint account started showing unexplained transactions: hair treatments, nail sessions, clothing purchases from high-end boutiques. When I asked about them, Sierra would shrug, "I need to look good for my job." The asymmetry became glaring after 18 months of marriage. I was working 60, 70-hour weeks managing a team of 40 engineers. Sierra worked 3 days a week at Revive, yet somehow, I don't have time to deal with household stuff. Bryce. She began distancing herself from my family. When my mother's birthday came around, Sierra refused to attend. "I don't want to pretend to get along with everyone," she said, though my family had welcomed her warmly from day one. My sleep deteriorated. Stomach pains became constant companions. Still, I persevered. Every marriage goes through rough patches, I told myself, swallowing antacids with my morning coffee. Then came the breaking point. After a 14-hour workday supervising a critical phase of construction, I arrived home to darkness. No lights, no dinner, no Sierra dishes piled in the sink from what looked like multiple meals. The house felt abandoned. I checked Instagram. There she was: lunch at an expensive French restaurant, nail session with Trina, check-in at a $300 spa treatment. All while I'd been standing in mud and rain solving engineering crises, I called, no answer. When she finally came home, she sprawled on the couch scrolling through TikTok videos as if I weren't standing there exhausted and hungry. Was there a reason you couldn't handle any housework today? I finally asked. She didn't even look up. I'm not your maid, Bryce. If you need a housekeeper, hire one. Something broke inside me. What exactly do you think you contribute to this relationship? The words escaped before I could filter them. Sierra finally looked at me, her expression cold and entitled, I'm your wife. My presence should be enough. I didn't feel pain in that moment. I felt emptiness. The woman I thought I'd married had never existed. That night, Sierra invited Trina over. They drank wine and laughed loudly until 2 a.m. while I tried to sleep on the sofa cold and exhausted. At 3:17 a.m., I opened my laptop and created a new spreadsheet. I titled it Reciprocity Plan XLSX and began to type. That night became the turning point, sitting in the blue glow of my laptop screen. I began documenting the slow death of my marriage. I listed everything Sierra had once done that made our relationship feel balanced and whole, followed by when each of those things had stopped. The cooking meals she once lovingly prepared had disappeared after month 15. The emotional support during my work stress had vanished entirely after month 18. Physical intimacy had been rejected consistently for the past 4 months. Her financial contributions remained consistently below our agreed percentage, and participation in my family events that had been abandoned completely. My engineering mind took over as I categorized my findings into 3 distinct areas: financial daily living and emotional social interactions. By 6 a.m., fueled by black coffee and cold realization, I had constructed a detailed spreadsheet that would become my roadmap to reclaiming dignity. The financial analysis hit hardest. I was covering 80% of our mortgage, utilities, insurance, and general expenses. Sierra's contribution had dwindled to less than 10% despite our agreement to split costs proportionally to income. Even accounting for her part-time status, she should have been contributing at least 25%. More disturbing was what I discovered reviewing our statements. Just 1 week before I had to cancel a dinner with my sister and her kids. Because Sierra said we needed to budget more carefully, she had withdrawn $700 for essential shopping. The credit card statement revealed Nordstrom, Sephora, and a wine bar with Trina. The next morning, I drove to a different bank across town and opened a new personal account. I transferred exactly 50% of our shared savings, not a penny more, despite having contributed far more. I set up my direct deposit to split 18% to our joint account, matching Sierra's actual contribution percentage, and the rest to my new private account. I also programmed alerts on our joint credit card for any charges exceeding $200. If Sierra wanted financial independence, she could have it along with financial responsibility. It took 3 days for her to notice. I was reviewing project blueprints at the dining table when she stormed in, phone in hand. Why is there only $2,000 in our account? Are you hiding money? Her voice pitched higher than normal. I didn't look up from my work. I'm just doing what you've been doing for the past 2 years, keeping my fair share separate. Her strategy shifted instantly. The anger vanished, replaced by the soft, sweet Sierra I'd fallen for initially. She moved behind me, gentle hands on my shoulders, massaging lightly. Baby, I've been thinking, could we maybe get away this weekend? Just the 2 of us at that cabin by Lake Superior. Her voice had that honeyed quality reserved for when she wanted something. Sure, I said evenly. We can split all costs down the middle. Her fingers stopped moving. I thought you'd want to treat me. I'm cutting back on unnecessary expenses. I replied, using her exact words from months earlier. Like you always say, we need to budget carefully. The manipulation tactics escalated quickly after that. First came the accusations. You've changed, you're cold. Are you seeing someone else? I looked at her directly. No, I'm just living equitably now. When that failed, she called in reinforcements. Her father, Dale Dalton, a retired bank manager who had always treated me with distant cordiality, called that evening. Bryce, Sierra tells me you're financially strangling her. That's not how a husband treats his wife. His voice carried the weight of patriarchal authority he clearly still believed he possessed. With respect, Dale, this is between me and Sierra. I appreciate your concern, but I'm not an endless ATM. My voice remained calm, but firm. She's your wife. You provide for her. And she's my partner meant to contribute to our life together. I'm applying the same standards to both of us. After he hung up, I implemented Phase 2 selected independence in daily living. I began cooking just enough for myself. I cleaned my dishes but left hers in the sink. I did my own laundry, placing a sign on the machine, "Laundry in use, personal only," during my loads. Sierra's reaction was volcanic when she found her yogurt-stained blouse still sitting in the hamper after 3 days. "Are you serious? You did laundry without washing my clothes." "I washed what I use just like you take care of what you use." I didn't look up from my book. The next day, she asked me to drive her to her spa appointment. "I'm working on project calculations. You can call an Uber." I didn't offer to pay for it. "Are you for real? I'm your wife." Her face flushed with genuine shock. I finally looked at her. "And I'm your husband. I'm treating you exactly how you've been treating me." Behind her anger, I saw a flicker of something new, uncertainty. The rules had changed, and she didn't know how to play this game. While implementing my external boundaries, I worked just as diligently on internal protection. Each night, I documented her emotional manipulation tactics in a journal. I noted how she used tears whenever logic failed her, how she would withhold affection, then suddenly offer it when wanting something, the countless promises she made with no intention of keeping them. The stark contrast between her public displays of affection and her private coldness, and her habit of triangulating conflicts by involving her father or Trina to pressure me. I began recording our arguments. Minnesota being a one-party consent state for recordings, especially when she made threats or mentioned divorce. I wasn't planning to use these recordings maliciously, but I needed protection from potential false accusations. I also researched Minnesota's divorce laws extensively. Unlike many states' automatic 50-50 splits, Minnesota courts consider contributions to the marriage when dividing assets, if there's clear documentation of imbalance. I began organizing financial records, text messages, and calendar entries showing household contributions. The breaking point came unexpectedly. Sierra had left her laptop open while showering one morning. A notification popped up confirmation of a $5,000 luxury resort booking, charged to my personal credit card, not our joint one. The reservation was for the following month, overlapping with a critical milestone in my project. When confronted, Sierra didn't even pretend remorse. "I need a break. I'm exhausted from living with you." I stared at her, seeing not my wife, but a stranger wearing her face. "With my credit card." Without asking, she shrugged. "We're married. What's yours is mine." As she walked away, I noticed another email in her drafts folder. Against my better ethical judgment, I clicked it. The message was addressed to Trina. "If I divorce him, he'll fall apart completely. Men like Bryce only seem strong on the outside. I'll get what I deserve from this marriage one way or another." Something cold and resolute settled in my chest. I knew exactly what I had to do next. The following week, I fully implemented what I called my independent living protocol within our shared home. My change wasn't just financial anymore, it was a complete lifestyle separation. I installed a small padlock on one of the kitchen cabinets where I stored my groceries after Sierra borrowed the premium coffee beans I'd bought without asking. I set alarms on my phone for cooking and cleaning, creating a predictable schedule that didn't align with Sierra's random hours. Most dramatically, I purchased a portable mini washing machine from Amazon that I could use in our bathroom, eliminating the need to share laundry space. Sierra's reaction wasn't immediate anger as I'd expected. Instead, she watched me with a confused expression as I methodically moved through our shared spaces without complaint, without accusation, just quiet, determined action. For perhaps the first time in our marriage, I was completely unreadable to her. "You're acting weird," she said one evening as I prepared my dinner while she scrolled through her phone at the kitchen island. "I'm just being efficient," I replied without looking up from the chicken I was seasoning enough for exactly one person. "Aren't you making any for me?" "I didn't think you'd want any. You haven't eaten dinner with me in 73 days. The precise count slipped out before I could censor myself. She stared at me for a long moment. "You've been counting." I didn't answer, just continued cooking in silence. 3 nights later came her first real counterattack. I was reading project reports in what had become my bedroom, formerly our guest room, when Sierra entered without knocking. She wore lingerie I'd never seen before, black silk and lace that must have cost hundreds. Without speaking, she posed in the doorway, one hand on her hip, lips slightly parted in the expression she used to give me early in our relationship. I glanced up, made brief eye contact, then returned to my magazine. "I'm tired," I said, using the exact phrase she'd deployed countless times. She didn't move. For over 2 minutes she stood frozen in disbelief, waiting for me to change my mind, to show any hint that her physical presence still held power over me. When I turned the page without looking up again, she finally left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the pictures on the wall. In my journal that night I wrote, "Today for the first time she experienced what rejection feels like. Her weapon of choice has become useless." When physical manipulation failed, Sierra escalated to social pressure. She began telling her mother, Trina, and her cousin Danica carefully edited versions of our situation, painting herself as the victim of my sudden emotional abandonment and financial control. Sierra's mother, Pamela, a woman who had always been cordial but distant with me, sent a Facebook message. "If you don't love my daughter anymore, you should let her go rather than punishing her." I responded simply, "I'm not keeping anyone, but I will no longer accept being used." The family pressure might have worked months earlier, but I had built new emotional fortifications. Each attempted manipulation only confirmed the correctness of my strategy. The real test came during a dinner party with my college friends, people who had known me long before Sierra entered my life. Throughout the evening, Sierra performed the role of adoring wife with Oscar-worthy commitment. She touched my arm constantly, kissed my cheek mid-conversation, and called me honey and babe with nauseating frequency. The same woman who hadn't voluntarily touched me in weeks suddenly couldn't keep her hands off me in public. When my friend Marcus asked about our summer plans, Sierra immediately jumped in before I could speak. "We're planning a trip to Palm Springs in July. I want to make sure my hardworking man gets some proper relaxation." I smiled slightly, making direct eye contact with her. "That sounds nice. If the plans are clear and we split costs 50-50, I'd definitely be interested in going somewhere." Her face froze in a grotesque parody of her smile. Under the table, she squeezed my hand, her manicured nails digging painfully into my skin. I didn't flinch. The ride home was silent, but the storm broke as soon as our front door closed. "You humiliated me in front of your friends!" she screamed, throwing her purse onto the couch. I remained calm. "No, you embarrassed yourself by lying about plans we never discussed. I was trying to make things better between us, to give us something to look forward to. By announcing a trip I knew nothing about, one you clearly expected me to pay for. Why are you being like this?" Her voice cracked as she shifted tactics, tears suddenly appearing. "What happened to the man I married?" "He woke up," I said quietly. Sierra grabbed her wineglass from earlier that evening and slammed it down on the coffee table. It shattered, sending glass shards and red wine across the polished surface and onto the carpet. I didn't react, just went to get a towel and began methodically cleaning the mess, while she watched, breathing heavily. 3 days later, while sorting through a stack of magazines to recycle, I discovered a confirmation email hidden between pages. Sierra had charged $14,700 to our joint credit card for something called the Gold Serenity Retreat, a 5-day luxury package at a desert resort that included spa treatments, shopping excursions, private jet transportation between venues, and 5-star accommodations. The reservation was for 4 people: Sierra, Trina, and 2 other friends I barely knew. I waited until dinner when I knew Sierra would be home. I placed the printed email on the kitchen counter beside her phone. "You spent nearly $15,000 from our joint account without saying a word to me." My voice was controlled, but my hands were shaking. Sierra didn't even look surprised at being caught. "I need to recover mentally. Living with you lately is like living with a talking ATM that complains too much." The casual cruelty of her words struck me like a physical blow. "You have no right to spend money I earned on personal vacations with your friends." "The card has both our names on it," she said, examining her nails. "If you try to cancel the charge, I'll sue you." In all our years together, I had never felt such cold rage. Not anger at her betrayal. I was beyond that now, but fury at myself for not seeing her true nature years earlier. That night, I installed a small motion-activated camera in our living room, hidden among the books on our shelf. It was legal in my own home, and I needed evidence of what I suspected was happening. The very next afternoon, my foresight paid off. While I was supposed to be at a site inspection, Sierra called Trina from our living room, accidentally putting the call on speakerphone. If we divorce, he has to pay his share of the assets. Sierra's voice rang clear through my earbuds as I reviewed the footage later that night. The laws here protect women. I've got it all figured out. Trina's tinny voice replied, "Are you sure he seems different lately? Less predictable. He's still the same pushover deep down." Sierra laughed. "Men like him talk tough, but fold when pushed. I just need to play my cards right." I paused the recording, the screen fading to black as I sat alone in the darkness of my temporary bedroom. A strange calm washed over me, replacing months of hurt and confusion. The cards are in my hand now, I whispered to the empty room. The next morning, I took my first proactive step. I'd spent months playing defense. It was time to go on the offensive. Carla Moen's law office occupied the 14th floor of a sleek downtown building. My friend Thomas had recommended her after his own divorce 2 years earlier. "She doesn't play games," he'd told me, "and she doesn't lose." The receptionist led me to a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows. Carla stood as I entered, a tall woman with steel gray hair and glasses that somehow managed to look both intellectual and intimidating. "So," she said after I'd explained my situation, "you've been keeping records?" I placed my external hard drive on her desk. "Everything is here. Financial statements showing the imbalance in contributions, screenshots of her hidden purchases, texts where she admits to not caring about our agreements, and most recently a recording where she explicitly discusses plans to exploit divorce laws for financial gain." Carla plugged in the drive and scanned through several folders, her expression unchanging, yet somehow growing harder. "In Minnesota, we can petition the court to deviate from the standard 50-50 division if we can demonstrate significant disparity in contributions or evidence of financial exploitation." She explained, "What you've compiled here makes a compelling case for asset division proportional to contribution. In your case, roughly 83-17 split based on these figures." For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. Not hope for saving my marriage that was long gone, but hope for justice. "Can she fight this?" I asked. "Of course she'll fight, but evidence speaks louder than emotional appeals if we present this properly." As I left Carla's office, I felt a strange lightness. The burden hadn't disappeared, but now someone else was helping me carry it. More importantly, I was finally taking back control. The external changes in my lifestyle were now matched by internal transformation. I started waking at 5 a.m. to work out in the small home gym I'd set up in our basement, a space Sierra never visited. The physical exertion burned away the lingering depression that had clouded my mind. My body began changing, shedding the soft layer that stress eating had built over the past year. I got a new haircut, shorter, sharper, more confident than the shaggy style I'd worn throughout our marriage. I replaced my wardrobe, donating clothes Sierra had chosen for me and selecting new pieces that reflected who I was becoming rather than who she wanted me to be. Each morning, I listened to podcasts about personal boundaries and self-respect while driving to work. Each evening, I read about property law and marriage counseling, not to save our relationship, but to understand exactly what had gone wrong and how to prevent it in the future. I reorganized our bedroom, moving my remaining possessions to the guest room and changing the lock on my personal safe. I scanned every important document, tax returns, investment statements, property records, and secured digital copies in encrypted cloud storage. Only I could access. Sierra noticed these changes with growing unease. The more I transformed, the more her typical tactics failed. Like a chess player who suddenly realizes they're 3 moves from checkmate, she became increasingly desperate. One evening, she burst into my room without knocking, clutching the printed spa retreat confirmation. "If you don't pay for this trip, I'll divorce you," she declared, her voice straining for authority she no longer possessed. I looked directly into her eyes, seeing not the woman I'd once adored, but a stranger I'd been foolish enough to trust. "I accept if that's your choice." Her face went through a remarkable transformation: shock, confusion, fear, and finally, desperate calculation. For more than 10 seconds she stood completely silent, recalibrating her approach. "You think I'm joking?" she finally managed. "No, but I'm no longer joking about my self-respect either." The ultimatum having failed, Sierra immediately pivoted to what had once been her most effective strategy: vulnerability. Her eyes welled with tears as her posture softened from confrontational to pleading. "I'm scared of losing you, Bryce," she whispered, her voice cracking perfectly. "We used to be so happy." "We weren't both happy," I replied quietly. "I loved you. You loved what I provided for you." She moved toward me, sitting on the edge of my bed, her hand reaching for mine. "We can fix this. Let me show you how much I still care." When her fingers brushed my arm, I turned away. When intimacy becomes about connection rather than manipulation, I might consider it. Until then, I'm not interested. 3 days later, a courier delivered an envelope from Whitlow and Merrick. Attorneys at Law Sierra had filed for divorce, demanding a 50% split of all assets, exclusive right to our home for at least 3 years, ownership of the Lexus I'd purchased the previous year, and monthly alimony payments. I called Carla, immediately forwarding the documents to her office. Her response was calm and confident. "This is actually good news. She's shown her hand too early before realizing how much evidence we have. We'll prepare our counterfiling immediately." That evening, I sat at my computer, crafting a careful email that I sent individually to each friend and family member. "You may hear troubling things about my marriage in the coming weeks. I'm not asking you to choose sides, but if you hear only one version of the story, please reserve judgment until you've heard mine as well. This situation is more complex than it may initially appear." On my screen, I looked at the folder labeled Reciprocity Evidence. What had started as a simple spreadsheet had grown to over 300 files, a detailed chronology of manipulation, exploitation, and betrayal. My finger hovered over the mouse button for just a moment before I clicked Create Shared Folder. Final strike. The evidence was organized, backed up, and now ready to deploy. I was done being the victim in someone else's story. It was time to become the protagonist in my own. The weeks leading up to our first mediation session were a blur of preparation. Carla and I spent hours organizing the evidence into a compelling narrative that even the most sympathetic judge couldn't ignore. "We need to be methodical," Carla explained as we reviewed the documentation list. "This isn't about emotion, it's about facts and patterns." Our final evidence packet included 3 years of financial statements, showing the growing disparity in contributions. I had maintained a detailed spreadsheet tracking every household expense, showing how my share had climbed from an agreed 60-40 split to an unconscionable 80-20, and finally to nearly 90-10 during our last 6 months together. We had receipts for Sierra's personal shopping sprees, charged to our joint account luxury items that never benefited our household. The evidence showed a pattern of escalating entitlement, small purchases at first growing bolder until the $14,700 spa retreat that broke the camel's back. Perhaps most damning was the recording where Sierra candidly discussed her divorce strategy with Trina, outlining how she planned to exploit Minnesota's marital property laws. Carla had enhanced the audio quality, creating a transcript with speakers clearly identified. We even had photographs documenting household contributions, time-stamped images showing the evolution of our home life. Sierra smiling and cooking during the first year gradually replaced by empty kitchen counters and my solo meal preparations as time progressed. "We'll request a division based precisely on contribution," Carla confirmed. "Based on our documentation, that's roughly 83% for you and 17% for her. The court rarely grants such uneven splits, but we have extraordinary evidence of financial imbalance." When the mediation day arrived, Sierra entered the conference room like she was walking a runway, white silk pantsuit, professional makeup, not a hair out of place. Her attorney Lance Whitlow exuded the practiced confidence of someone who'd never lost a case. They took their seats across from us, exchanging glances that spoke volumes about their expectations for the day. Sierra's opening demands were breathtaking in their audacity. "My client is entitled to 50% of all marital assets." Whitlow began, his voice smooth and authoritative. "Additionally, we request exclusive use of the marital home for 5 years monthly support of $3,000, the Lexus vehicle purchased last year." The jewelry collection Mr. Ellison gifted to Mrs. Ellison during the marriage and continued health insurance coverage. Throughout their presentation, Carla and I remained silent, taking notes, but offering no reaction. Sierra's expression grew increasingly smug with each unchallenged demand. When our turn came, Carla didn't waste words. Before responding to these demands, we'd like to present some relevant information. She connected her laptop to the projector and launched a PowerPoint presentation titled simply, Financial Contributions Ellison Marriage, 2018-2022. The first slide showed a pie chart of our proportional financial contributions to household expenses. Sierra's slice was a sliver compared to mine, and it had shrunk annually. As you can see, Carla narrated calmly, Mrs. Ellison's financial contribution to the marriage declined from 40% in year 1 to less than 10% by year 3, despite maintaining employment and increasing her personal spending during this period. Lance shifted uncomfortably as Carla advanced to images of shopping receipts, credit card statements, and bank withdrawals, all showing Sierra's personal luxury purchases using our joint funds. The final slide contained a video thumbnail. When Carla clicked play, Sierra's voice filled the room. If we divorce, he'll have to pay his share. The laws here protect women. I've got it all figured out. Men like him talk tough but fold when pushed. Lance's face drained of color. Sierra sat frozen, her carefully constructed facade crumbling as her own words condemned her. The mediator cleared her throat. I think we should take a 30-minute recess for both parties to reconsider their positions. In a small conference room down the hall, Sierra and I found ourselves alone. Her request, not mine. Her demeanor had transformed completely. You used to love me, she whispered, her voice trembling. Are you really going to throw me out on the street after everything we've been through? I looked at the woman I had once built my life around. I loved someone who was willing to be a partner, not someone who played the victim while stabbing me in the back. You want to see me poor and miserable, don't you? Her eyes narrowed. What I want, I said evenly, is for you to understand what it feels like to be drained of every dollar, every breath, every ounce of goodwill without anyone caring how it affects you. When we reconvened, Sierra's attorney had clearly adjusted his approach. Gone were the excessive demands, replaced with cautious inquiries about what we might consider reasonable. Carla presented our counteroffer without emotion. We propose Mrs. Ellison receive 26% of net marital assets, reflecting her average contribution over the marriage, plus a goodwill adjustment. She will assume responsibility for all credit card debt accrued after the filing date. While she will not retain ownership rights to the house, we offer a 60-day period for her to arrange new accommodations. No monthly support will be provided. Lance leaned over to whisper in Sierra's ear. Her shoulders slumped as she nodded. The mediator reviewed our proposal and supporting evidence. Based on the documentation provided showing clear imbalance in contributions and evidence of potential financial manipulation, I find this proposal reasonable and will recommend its approval to the court. 2 weeks later, we met for the final signing. Sierra looked nothing like the confident woman who had entered mediation in her power suit. Her eyes were rimmed red, her hands visibly trembling as she held the pen over the signature line. If you still love me even a little, she whispered, so only I could hear, we could try again. Everything could go back. I signed my name, set the pen down, and met her gaze. You should learn to love someone besides yourself. She walked out without looking back, the click of her heels fading down the hallway. The final notes of our marriage's funeral march. As we gathered our papers, Carla turned to me with an envelope I hadn't noticed before. This came for you at my office. It's an invitation to speak. They want you to share your story at the Modern Men's Conference next month. I opened it, scanning the contents. The proposed topic caught my eye. Rebirth after divorce, the journey from financial victim to self-worth. How did they even hear about me? I asked. Carla smiled. Your case has generated some attention in legal circles. It's unusual for someone to document a relationship's decline so meticulously. You might help others recognize the warning signs before they're too deep. I tucked the invitation into my pocket, not yet sure if I was ready to transform my private pain into a public narrative. But for the first time in years, the future felt open with possibility. rather than shrouded in dread. The morning after finalizing our divorce, I awoke to a strange sensation: lightness. For the first time in years, the weight of pretending accommodating and self-betrayal had lifted. I moved through the house with newfound energy, making a mental list of everything that needed to change. First came the financial severing. I closed our joint credit cards and checking accounts, transferring the agreed-upon settlement to Sierra's new personal account. The mortgage was refinanced solely in my name, a process I'd started weeks earlier in anticipation of the court's decision. Then came the physical transformation of the space. I hired a crew to repaint every room, replacing Sierra's preferred beige with colors that actually sparked joy: deep blues in the bedroom, a warm terracotta in the kitchen. I donated her abandoned clothing and decorative items to charity keeping, nothing that might trigger memories. I replaced furniture where we'd sat together, choosing pieces based solely on my preferences for the first time. Standing in my renovated living room, running my hand along a new leather sofa that Sierra would have hated, I felt like a snake that had shed its constricting old skin. The scent of fresh paint and new beginnings filled my lungs with each breath. 2 weeks later, I received an unexpected call from Trina. We'd never been close. She'd always been Sierra's ally, so her name on my caller ID was surprising enough to make me answer. "She's selling her designer bags to pay off the spa debt," Trina said without preamble, her voice a mix of concern and schadenfreude. "The retreat place is threatening legal action because her card was declined for the final payment." I said nothing, waiting for her to continue. She tried moving back in with her mother, but Pamela refused, said she didn't raise her daughter to be a 32-year-old parasite. Trina paused. "She's renting some cheap Airbnb now. I had to give her full-time hours at the boutique, but she's struggling. I've heard her crying in the stockroom after dealing with customers." "Why are you telling me this?" I finally asked. A long pause followed. "I guess I thought you should know. And maybe I feel a little guilty for encouraging her. I never thought it would end like this." I thanked her for the call, but offered no comfort. Sierra's circumstances were the natural consequences of her choices, not my responsibility to fix. My own life was taking shape around new routines and recovered passions. I joined a boxing gym, finding satisfaction in the disciplined movement and controlled aggression. Each morning began at 5 a.m. with a run, followed by journaling and 10 minutes of meditation practices that helped untangle the emotional knots Sierra had tied in me over the years. Carla's invitation to speak at the Modern Men's Conference turned into something unexpected. My talk about recognizing financial and emotional manipulation in relationships struck a chord with many attendees. Several approached afterward with tears in their eyes, recognizing their own marriages. In my description, this led to launching a podcast called Men Who Rebuild, a platform where I and other men shared stories of recovering from toxic relationships and reclaiming our sense of self. Within 6 months, we'd surpassed 100,000 listeners and secured sponsorship from Reclaim, an athletic wear company focused on mental and physical transformation. The podcast wasn't about vilifying women. It was about recognizing unhealthy dynamics and finding the courage to demand reciprocity or walk away. We discussed red flags, boundaries, and the cultural pressures that often keep men silent about emotional abuse. Life settled into a satisfying rhythm until an unexpected encounter at my college friend Marcus's wedding. I attended alone, comfortable in my solitude, wearing a tailored gray suit that reflected my new confidence. I was midway through a conversation with the bride's brother when I saw her, Sierra accompanied by a tall man I didn't recognize. She looked thinner than I remembered her signature perfect appearance, slightly frayed at the edges. She avoided the dance floor, instead drinking steadily from a succession of wine glasses. Our paths crossed inevitably during the reception. As we passed each other near the bar, she leaned close enough that only I could hear her whisper, "You one happy now?" I paused, meeting her gaze directly. This wasn't about winning, it was about living authentically. She flinched as if I'd struck her, then disappeared into the crowd. I didn't see her again that night. Through mutual acquaintances, I gradually heard about Sierra's unraveling life. Trina had left Revive Boutique, citing irreconcilable differences with Sierra, who had apparently alienated several longtime clients with her increasingly bitter attitude. Sierra attempted to launch a small online fashion consulting business, but it quickly generated complaints about late deliveries and poor service. Her financial situation deteriorated as credit card debt from her pre-divorce spending spree, now exceeding $20,000, came due with compounding interest. A former colleague mentioned seeing her consulting with a bankruptcy attorney, though her case was complicated by the fact that she couldn't demonstrate financial hardship concurrent with her spending patterns. I took no pleasure in her struggles. Sierra hadn't been destroyed by me or anyone else. She was simply facing the natural consequences of her actions, perhaps for the first time in her life. The universe was providing the lessons I never could. My own life continued flourishing. The keynote speech I delivered at the National Modern Men's Conference was live-streamed to thousands. A bad marriage doesn't destroy you. I told the audience, what destroys you is silence, unlimited forgiveness, and losing yourself in the process. True strength isn't enduring mistreatment. It's having the courage to expect better, whether that means setting boundaries or walking away. After the conference, a woman approached me, Kendra, a 34-year-old financial advisor with intelligent eyes and a warm smile that didn't ask anything of me. We exchanged numbers, meeting occasionally for coffee over the following months. I moved slowly, cautiously, still healing, but for the first time in years, I felt peaceful sitting across from someone sharing thoughts without calculating costs or managing impressions. One evening, 6 months after the divorce, an email arrived in my podcast's inbox. The subject line read simply, "I am your ex." The body contained just one line, "If only I had appreciated you sooner." I stared at it for several minutes, feeling neither vindication nor pain, just a calm acknowledgement of closure. I deleted it without replying. That night I stood on my balcony watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of amber and gold. The cooling air carried the scent of my neighbor's grilling dinner and distant laughter from children playing in the park across the street. Forgiveness, I whispered to the fading light, isn't about whether they deserve it. It's about whether I deserve freedom. I took a deep breath, feeling the last lingering tendrils of bitterness dissolve into the gathering twilight. Sierra was living her truth now, just as I was living mine. Our paths had diverged permanently, but the lessons remained lessons about self-worth, reciprocity, and the courage to demand both. I turned away from the sunset and went inside, closing the door gently behind me. Tomorrow was a new day, and I would face it as the man I had finally become, whole, uncompromised, and authentically myself.